vaccinated against COVID-19. They are also advising unvaccinated people to avoid large gatherings and mask up indoors where the vaccination status of other people are unknown. And 6, other variants are still on the way. Even though the Delta variant is currently the most prominent strain of COVID-19 currently, the Lambda variant out of South America is still emerging. Health experts urge that if people want to get back to normal, a significant portion of the population needs to be vaccinated. So get your vaccines today, mask up, and stay safe.
Hey, what's up, guys? You're welcome to another edition of Plus Event, and I remain your host, Ifeoluwa Oshukeye.
Your absence isn't an excuse anymore, as Plus Events is all you need, as we bring you the glitz, the glamour, and loads of fun.
Oh, definitely, right? No question. He's a living legend.
Oh, God forbid, Holy Ghost fire, I know.
I just want to be blown away. I want to be wild. This is 11 years of doing it.
I'm surrounded by so much positivity.
No, it's okay.
Yo, what's up, my people? It's your boy Starboy Terry. You're watching
Plus Event
on Plus TV.
Stay glued to Plus TV Africa every Saturday and Sunday, 4:30 p.m. West African time.
Where does the energy of a nation, not country, of a nation lie? It lies in the youth. They are the ones with the energy to do anything. They are the ones with the energy, what we call the reckless abandon, to go and seek truth. What we have is not truth. We need to seek it. Now, unfortunately, to seek truth, you need a minimum level of education. And I'm not referring to schooling. I'm referring to education. Now, if you look at the youth population between 18 and 40, right now, the unemployment and underemployment as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics for that age bracket is 50%. You have 10 youth standing. Half of them are either unemployed or underemployed. So all of that energy required for nation building is idle, doing nothing. And youthful energy never does nothing. It's either creating or it's destroying. And politicians have taken advantage of that idle energy. And in your opinion, are they building with it?
I always say that being busy doesn't amount to productivity. You can be busy and not productive. So it's not that I'm busy. What are you busy on?
We should really start focusing more on what we put our attention on, not about I need to achieve this in 2 hours. No. This is what you need to achieve. I need to achieve this, I need to achieve this, I need to achieve that, and not the duration that you need to achieve them.
The advance of science and technology, and especially internet technology, has broken the barrier of connectivity of human resource. Before you have to fly, sometimes you have to fly an expatriate down to your locality to do something, but in this era, you don't even have to do that.
We always refer to countries like Singapore, refer to countries like even the United States, and we always want to become like them. But realize that the foundation is that we have to be conscious of the fact that we are putting in the right people in power. That way, we can then demand for good governance.
Nigerian inflation rate falls by 0.37% in 7 straight months. According to a report by Consumer Price Index, CPI says that the prices of goods and services, which rose by 15.99% in October, is 1.7% higher than the rate recorded in October 2020, 14.23%.
And we will be reviewing the newspapers on Off the Press this morning with our guests. And with that, we'll say good morning and thanks for joining us. It's a Tuesday morning here on PlusTvAfrica. Welcome to The Breakfast. I am Osaogi Ogbon.
And I am Messi Boko. As usual, it's good to have you join us.
All right, as always, we kick off with top trending stories. This morning, it's all the stories on Top Trending are a little sad, but of course we'll go through them, share with you the major discussions that have happened across the country in the last 24 hours. The first one here, we will start in Lagos State, where of course the Lagos State panel of inquiry that was set up, after the End SARS protest, eventually put out its report yesterday and has some very, very, well, for some people, shocking, damning, stunning revelations and findings. For some people, but for me personally, there's nothing that is shocking. It's just a couple of things that I might say, oh, I didn't know it was this bad, or I didn't know that this, thing, happened. So some of the, the important details with regards to all of that, the report basically shares every single thing that was found, through cross-examination of the army, of the NSAS protesters, and everybody concerned, including, doctors and medical personnel, everybody, that they could interview. And their findings really, tell a very, very, very sad story. I like the fact that they eventually got to a point where they said that, yes, it is an actual massacre that happened on the 20th of October, 2020. And it also details, the fact that as much as 96 people were killed during the NSAS protest here in Lagos. And unfortunately, they couldn't verify exactly how many of them were at the Lekki toll gate. The report does, point out about 11 people that were killed at the Lekki toll gate, but it records about 96 deaths that were recorded here in Lagos during the NSAS protest. It also goes on to say that there was a couple of bodies. I also read further in the report that shows about 20 bodies that were unidentified, that I don't even think are part of the 96 that they are mentioning now. 20 plus bodies that were dumped at mortuaries, dumped at general hospitals that were not identified till date. They really have, tags. That is one of the things that I noticed, that these persons, these Nigerians, these lives were lost and they ended up as tags. They are called NSAS Yaba /25. NSAS Lekki /32. Those are how they end, that's how they ended up. It's a really, 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 really sad story. And it also says, one of the things that have been asked is, who ordered for the military to be invited to Lagos. And it says over there in the report that it's the Lagos State governor who invited the soldiers to the Lekki toll gate. It says also that the soldiers did fire live ammunition. They came back the next morning with trucks filled with brushes to clean up blood. Also says that police, after the army had done, the damage that they had done, the police went on and continued shooting into a crowd of protesters. It's such a messy, hurtful report.
Very, very messy. And just like I mentioned, off camera, that it is really it's quite emotional because, there's no way you expect me to talk about this and not feel very pained and not feel that I should, show some emotions, really, because I'm human. And it could be anyone. It could be anyone. I would still say this. We have lost humanity across the entire, if you look at the world entirely, it's a problem. There's a problem of the fact that we don't understand. And that's why sometimes if you look at my bio on social media, I put up first that I'm a human being. I'm human first. And you need to understand that before I am any other thing, before you begin to put tags to me, I am a human being. And in dealing with me, you need to understand that. It's really, really sad. But let's stay with the Nigerians, Nigeria right now as a country. And the fact that we don't have respect for human life. The fact that, you know, those who should protect us are the ones taking advantage of us and are the ones killing us. Now, I am totally disappointed, and I will say this anywhere and anytime, that it's really, really sad that over time you have the fact that the government have denied, and they are still denying, that nothing has happened. And I must commend, you know, the judicial panel here in Lagos State. They have done a very great job. And this already, as a person, gives me a lot of hope. And I'm sure that this also gives, you know, a lot of people hope. Because usually with Nigeria, you know, I'm sure you get to hear the conversation that, oh, it's Nigeria. You understand? So even if they set up a panel of inquiry and all, oh, we're now in Nigeria now, nothing is going to happen. Really, really, just to say that, it shows that there's hope. They're still remnant, and I respect every person that was part of that team. And we're only hoping that, and I know that posterity would actually speak, it would ask. I wonder how those who were involved in this massacre, those who were involved in this particular act, how do they even sleep?
Not just those who
you know, because I'm sure that these police officers, they have kids. You know, so it's really disappointing once again for the Nigerian government. It's totally embarrassing. Yeah. And you could also remember the back and forth we had, you know, CNN being engaged, and then Lai Mohammed saying all sorts. Oh, we have to sue them. Oh, this is nothing really happened. And DJ Switch, you know, being dragged back and forth. Yeah. Now we have all of that evidence put out together.
And I like the, you know, well, in the last, you know, 6 to 8 hours, you know, the silence from all those who were part of the cover-up, all those who were part of, you know, the voices that went ahead with the narrative that nobody was killed at the toll gate. And I, you know, like you said, we've lost humanity, because I really cannot imagine what will make a person take that stand, seeing the evidence that was already glaring. And that's why I said I wasn't shocked with this, because I saw, you know, that these things actually did happen. But I'm not a forensic expert, so it was left for the panel to put out these findings. But there were people, there were human beings that said, oh, no, these things, they're all lies, you know, and that somebody even said that it was a CGI created video that DJ Sweet put out there. It's madness, complete madness. I'm going to share some of the things that it says for those who haven't seen the report. It says the evidence before the panel shows that the Nigerian army left the Nigerian, or rather after the Nigerian army left, the Nigerian police force followed up with the killing of protesters, shooting directly at fleeing protesters into the shanties and the lagoon at the Lekki Phase 1 foreshore, close to the Lekki toll gate, floating corpses, and shot one close to a person called Sarah Ibrahim. It goes further to talk about the arms used by the police when they eventually, or during the panel, they denied that they were even at the toll gate, that they even showed up, that they even left their police station. All those things eventually were found to be false. I see someone here also responding, saying that the findings at the Lagos NSAS panel are damning. Is established the fact that the army, led by Lieutenant Colonel Bello, was at the Lekki toll gate on the night of the massacre. The panel finds that live rounds were shot directly at protesters, resulting in mass casualties. There were 96 deaths during the NSAS protests in Lagos, deaths which resulted from army and police actions. There were many injuries and deaths at the Lekki toll gate. In effect, the number of death are unknown. It goes on to say, and this some of the other things that you will find very, very shocking. I hope I can quickly find it, where it says that they came back the next morning with trucks and filled with brushes to clean up blood and clean up whatever evidence that was left there at the Lekki toll gate. Yes, it says it was alleged that and corroborated that the soldiers had their vans packed at the Lekki toll gate and removed as many bodies and corpses of the fallen protesters, which they took away with their vans. One of the protesters who was shot and taken for dead, Olalekan Sanusi, who eventually escaped to narratives of daily experience, stated that 11 corpses were in the van where he was placed and presumed dead. It's such a mess.
It's a big mess. It's so much of a mess. I mean, I'm practically struggling to look for words, you know, to describe, you know, what it is right now. But what do you expect after this report has been put out? What do you really expect?
There are also recommendations, you know, at the tail end of the report that I didn't bother reading. There's a part where it says that the toll gate should be named the NSAS toll gate and some other things that I'm going to have to go further. I mean, I think it's a lot more. There's the recommended punishment for soldiers, dismissal for the army officers and for the police, and some of all of that.
I'm not saying that, all of this recommendation. I mean, we're talking about the fact that we have laws. We also have a problem for a government who is still in denial of the fact that, yes, nothing really happened. No one died. Soldiers were not there. The police, you didn't have police presence around. What do you expect? Do you think that, because don't forget, we're going to get a response. I'm predicting this, that the government will come out. Lai Mohammed is going to come out soon, and he's going to tell us another tale of how, those who are against this government, who are against the, the APC government, those who are really, really, really fighting against the Buhari's administration. And I constantly say this every other time, that Nigeria is bigger than a political party. Everything is not about President Muhammadu Buhari or the APC or a particular region. Lives have actually been lost. And I'm hoping that in a sane society, even prior to this ordered time, but of course, it's a conspiracy, it's a collaboration, that these persons probably wouldn't have acted on their own. Let's even go back to the beginning of, how we got to where we are. I mean, what led to all of this? The fact that people are protesting in a democratic society. I mean, protest has been used as a tool across the entire world. It feels like right now, Nigerians are just embracing protest. It is not today people that are protesting in different countries. What are they protesting for? If you also look at it, everyone has a right to association. Everyone has a right to a peaceful assembly. These persons were not. I saw videos of people singing the national anthem and, putting out the flag. And that could be so emotional. And then you had people in uniform who are acting as if they don't have human feelings, shooting innocent people. And I hope that the international, whenever I mention the international community, I know you look at me in a particular way. But, if the international community constantly says we're looking for, global prosperity and preaching all of that, it is high time. If, the system in itself, Nigeria cannot save itself, it's high time, that the international community steps into this, because it's a human right violation. Lives have been killed, lives have been lost, and all of that.
I would also just mention, because we need to move on to talk about Itunu Babalola. I would also just mention that when Chris Ngige is shocked that doctors are leaving Nigeria and wants them to work here for 9 years before they leave, this is the reason why doctors are leaving Nigeria, and this is the reason why Nigerians are leaving Nigeria, because of situations like this. I'll let the government, of course, go ahead and respond to the NSA's findings, or the panel findings, or the panel's report rather, and hear what they have to say, if they will go ahead and discredit this report or not. It was alleged and corroborated that soldiers picked bullet shells on the 9th of October 20. Policemen followed up in the morning of October 21st to pick up bullet shells. Several unidentified bodies were removed by security agencies, and Lagos State Environmental Health Monitoring Unit deposited at various hospital mortuaries in Lagos. 3 trucks with brushes underneath were brought to the Lekki toll gate in the morning of October 21st to clean up the scene of blood stains and other evidence. The Lagos State Governor, in his CNN interview, said that there was no blood when they went there. Inspector Fash came up a couple of days later and found the camera. Bola Ahmed Tinubu said that, what were they doing there? The president said that these were young people that were trying to remove him from government.
Oh, really?
It's a shame. All right. We'll move away from there and share another reason why a lot of Nigerians don't feel like they have any reason to associate themselves with Nigeria, because, once again, the value of the Nigerian life and the value of the Nigerian person to the Nigerian state has continued. We've continued to see reasons why, reasons basically showing that the Nigerian state doesn't care about the Nigerian person. Yesterday we spoke, I shared a story off air about a man who was in prison, an American, I hope I can find his name, who was in prison in Myanmar, was sentenced to jail in Myanmar. He was eventually released yesterday, of course, after the American government stepped in. And, whatever, diplomatic, means were necessary, got him out of America. He was, going to be sent back to got him out of Myanmar, was going to be sent back to the U.S. That is how a government that values the life of a citizen wherever they are, even in Antarctica, even in hellfire, they would go and do whatever they can to ensure that they save that life. But that's not the same thing for the Nigerian, who might be dealing with one challenge or the other in a different country. Itunu Babalola is a girl from Ibadan, I believe, or your state, who was doing business in Cote d'Ivoire for a while. She promised her mom that she was going to be visiting Nigeria every, quarterly and, spending some time. Sometime in 2019, she made that same visit, came back to Nigeria to visit her mom. By the time she returned, she found out that her apartment had been burgled in Cote d'Ivoire. The person who, of course, broke into her apartment and stole her valuables was arrested. Turned out to be a 14-year-old boy. He was arrested. She decided, of course, to take it, make a police case out of it. Unfortunately for her, the DPO, according to her statement in a letter that she wrote to Femi Gbajabiamila, the DPO in the station there claimed that he was an uncle to the little boy, the 14-year-old boy, and he didn't want the boy to go to jail or to, have his record tainted. And he offered to pay off, Itunu, some of the money that she claimed to have lost when her house was burgled. She complained that the money that he was offering was too little. And of course, he continued to find ways to bully her into dropping the case. Eventually, a couple of days later, she was arrested along with her sister and her sister's husband, her sister's boyfriend. They spent 3 months in jail. She was accused of using a little girl there in Cote d'Ivoire for prostitution. That's the first accusation. She eventually was, of course, arrested and spent months in jail. She sought, legal assistance that didn't really do much, difference. She eventually made a mistake by naming herself Becky Paul, during the court case. And from there, Itunu was eventually given a 20-year jail sentence in Cote d'Ivoire for a crime that she had absolutely no knowledge about. She continued to reach out to the Nigerian government, reach out to to Femi Gbajabiamila, reach out to NIDCOM, reach out to the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission and everybody possible. And that includes also persons that include David Hundeyi, who stepped in and continued to pursue this case, reach out to NIDCOM multiple times, Abike Dabiri and many other people who, of course, have been quoted in this story. But eventually, Itunu died 24 hours ago in a Cote d'Ivoire prison. Reports say that she died from complications of diabetic coma, and that's the end of her story. But this is another very, 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 and I can say very a billion times, hurtful story of how a Nigerian couldn't get help from the Nigerian government or from the Nigerian state when they needed the assistance the most. It feels, and the way that this story is told, it feels like she was completely abandoned by the Nigerian state.
Of course.
And eventually lost her life in Cote d'Ivoire.
There's some other part of the story where I read where, when she was arrested because he felt like you burgled my house and then they're turning it down on you because the person involved is a person of interest, apparently. So you still have the police brutality across board. And this, we're talking about a West African country. And most times, as much as I like not to stereotype Africa as it is, but I think that we have a big problem. Not that this is not happening in different parts of the world, in Asia and what have you. But my point is, you see Africa, West Africa again, and then when they had she's a Nigerian. No, she's a Nigerian. She's going to die and rot here. It's not going to be justice.
I saw that part of the story.
And so you still find out that the issue of police brutality is not just limited to Nigeria. It cuts across board, and let's even stay with our continent, Africa, West Africa, and that's it. I don't really understand that justice has been suppressed because everyone has a right to a fair hearing. There's no way something happens that you hear from just one side and jump into conclusion without hearing from the other side of the divide. So the fact that she was actually denied fair hearing, because that's also another part of the story. She was denied fair hearing, and as much as they tried to ensure that, she wasn't given that opportunity and looked up for everything to ensure that she was implicated, probably because she's a Nigerian. And of course, here we are.
I get that part, of unfair trials across. This happens across the world. That's
what I'm saying. I'm saying that as much as it's not limited to the African space or the Nigerian space as what's going on. Yeah. But let's even stay with us that this is also happening in another African country. Very, very close by.
Absolutely.
In the same region.
I think the biggest point in this story is not the fact that. There is unfairness, in the legal justice system across, in many parts of Africa. It is, what is the giant of Africa doing about its citizens and the life of its citizens in different countries across the world? What diplomatic power does Nigeria have, with a country like Cote d'Ivoire? Someone here, Dr. Ayo Shogunro says, Cote d'Ivoire is a small West African country that Nigeria can easily engage diplomatically. Yet, our government failed when it happens in Europe, Asia, or African sub-regions where Nigeria has no, yet our government failed rather. It says, what then happens in Europe, Asia, or other African sub-regions where Nigeria has no influence? What is the value of the Nigerian life anywhere? Demola Olarinwaju says here, understand that every failure of government kills the fire of patriotism in citizens, one candle at a time. Itunu Babalola didn't just die alone. Her death has snuffed out the light of hope in those who dare to believe that maybe, just this time, Nigeria will turn up differently.
I totally agree with you. I'm not saying that that's not, a big one here. But I'm also saying that as much as that's the issue, the fact that right now you hear the Nigerian government saying we're going to set up a panel to investigate. Yeah. I mean, this is like medicine after death, like it would be said out there, right? So when she was alive, we couldn't come through for her. Now that she's dead, we're going to, flex our muscle. It just shows you, it brings us back to the beginning of our conversation, that there's no value. We've lost humanity. Our leaders don't even understand. Me, I'm thinking that, for everybody that's going to be contesting for election, let's begin to ask people valid questions. We need to understand why we're government, why we want to represent the people. Security is very important. Protection of the life and properties of the people. That is your primary responsibility. Whether they are in Nigeria or outside Nigeria, it should be your concern. And as much as we're good at, imbibing and copying and borrowing, culture and practices from other countries, why can't we imbibe how other countries treat their citizens? It's really, really sad. I'm hoping that we don't have a repetition of this, but of course, I can't even guarantee, I can't say that that's not going to happen, because trust me, we're going to have a repeat of this same issue, and nothing is really going to happen.
We're going to have a longer conversation on Itunu Babalola's case sometime this week and expand further as to what exactly happened and what played out. It's a really, really, really sad story that broke my heart in 1,000 pieces yesterday. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we're moving to Off the Press, where we have a review of the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Tuesday morning. Stay with us.
Wake up, Motherland, to electrifying performances at the 2021 All-African Music Awards. Afrima, from November 19th to the 21st, 2021 at Eco Hotels, Lagos, Nigeria.
Featuring Africa Music Business Summit, a platform for business networking and interaction among music professionals.
Join Afrima Music Fest, an evening of non-stop music concerts with live broadcasts and performances from African music superstars. Date is Friday, November 19th from 6 p.m.
Sunday, November 21st comes with all the glitz and glam from Africa's music superstars, celebrities, and international personalities at Afrima Awards Ceremony. Red carpets 4:30 p.m, awards 7:30 p.m.
All at the Hotels and Suites, Victoria Island, Lagos, Nigeria. For tickets and seat reservation, visit www.afrima.org. Brought to you by GoBet247.com.
Navadina Hair.
Address home, Afrima. Still we sing. For hope, for celebration.
She was last seen yesterday.
I believe he has been chatting with someone, a young boy with a profile ID, Giggle.
Daddy, please help me. No, come on.
Just calm down.
Are you listening to me? Everything is not okay. He's lying.
Oh, the poor man is being Saki. Are you?
Does he have a laptop?
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there's regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. Nimasa bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
And thanks for joining us on Off the Press on The Breakfast and PlusTvAfrica. We will be checking out the pages and find out what's making the rounds. We do have Chris Wandu on standby. Good morning, Chris, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
All right, so I start off with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and we're looking at the bold caption on the Daily Trust newspaper. It reads, "Troops kill 50 ISWAP fighters in Borno." You will have riders underneath the bold caption. As bandits execute 15 persons in Sokoto, attack Zamfara village for failing to pay levy. All of that on the bold caption. Lekki Tollgate panel says 11 dead. It is cheaper to transport container from China to Lagos than Lagos to Kano. That's also another caption you find this morning. And Buhari approves fresh 656.1 billion naira bailout for states as governors meet over Paris Club reform. That's a rider underneath. We'll check out one or two before we move away. Ohanese wants autonomous region. Nigeria on alert as Iranian cyber spies target telecoms and ISPs. That's the much we can take on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
All right, and on the Punch newspapers, ASU threatens fresh strike, says agreed 22 billion naira allowance unpaid. Earned allowance not that of an association, says the education minister. And it says also hold government responsible if we go on another strike. Insurance firms rake in 2.1 trillion naira premium in 5 years, says a report. And also end SARS, 9 confirmed dead at Lekki Tollgate, says Lagos panel. Says the army likely used live bullets on protesters. 4 banks borrow $6.2 billion from foreign market amid dollar shortage. Still on the Punch, Nnamdi Kanu fighting for us, not himself, must be released, says Mbaka. And Ikoyi building engineers unveil preliminary report, suspect structural distress and others. Federal government orders probe as Nigerian...
Move away from the Punch newspaper this morning and check out The Guardian. Bold caption reads, inflation decelerates, defies market reality. That's what you find. And the writer says, figures contradicts global trend. Worst days ahead. Farmers warn and address insecurity to save situation. Federal government advice. Figures doctored to achieve predetermined objectives. Find out who's saying all of that on the Guardian newspaper this morning. And COVID-19, federal government reinstates December 1st deadline for workers to vaccinate. Government gets 3 weeks to meet ASU demands. Boko Haram seizes Shiroro and Rafi local government areas in Niger. And local airlines order 16 new aircraft at $1.2 billion at Dubai Air Show. And just before we move away from the Guardian newspaper, we quickly check out this saying it's difficult to be impartial, objective without autonomy, the Chief Justice of Nigeria tells Buhari. Very
and
interesting.
now to the leadership newspapers. Rising hardship, ACF, Ohaneze, Afenifere and others advise federal government on way out. One creative thinkers in cabinet. Poverty, unemployment worse in the north, says Jega. As to give federal government 3-week ultimatum to meet unions' demands. And also bandits ready to lay down arms, says Gumi. We can also find here states battle 300 billion naira pension liabilities. And judiciary's timely intervention saved democracy from collapse, says the CJN. We can also find here federal government warns against procurement of COVID-19 vaccination cards. Those are the stories that we have time for this morning. Chris Wandu, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you. Mr. Wandu, can you hear us clearly?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Where would you like to start from?
Of course, obviously, it has to be from Lekki, the report of the panel from Lekki. Some of us are not surprised by the outcome of that report. Expectedly, it has put paid to most of the allegations leveled against security agencies and that people lost their lives, which have been vehemently opposed to or defended by the federal government, especially the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, who was threatening brimstone and whatever, and throwing that at everybody that said that there were dead at that incident. And he took it to a more ridiculous height when he threatened international TV organizations like CNN, whom he threatened to sue, and the rest. But good enough, I will give kudos to that committee, that panel, for doing a very fantastic job with the report that they submitted to the Lagos State government yesterday. Yes, 9 or is it 11 people were confirmed dead, so many missing. And also the report from the pathologist who also carried that, who also mentioned that over 90 corpses were recovered within the period, but cannot be situated to the issue that happened at Lekki. But the Lagos State governor also said that he's going to set up a 4-man committee to come out with a white paper report on the this. So we wait for that. But the most important thing for me is that it has been confirmed, and that most of us have been saying time and time again, that people died at Lekki, Togate. I'm waiting for the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Lai Mohammed, to see his reaction, what he will say now. That the report has come out. This is a panel set up by government, not individual. He practically took the human rights organizations, NGOs, journalists, and everybody that spoke about that incident, and tried to paint everybody with one brush, saying that they are just saying things that were not tenable and that cannot substantiate it. But the evidence is clear, and the report is in.
Right,
Let's wait and see what he's going to say.
Mr. Wando, I want you to also react to two aspects. The first one is, it says here it was alleged and corroborated that soldiers picked bullet shells on the 9th of October 20th, and policemen followed up in the morning of October 21st to pick up bullet shells. It says several unidentified bodies were moved by security agencies and the Lagos State Environmental Health Monitoring Unit and deposited at various mortuaries in Lagos. It says 3 trucks with brushes underneath were brought to the Lekki toll gate in the morning to clean up the scene of blood stains and other evidence. So let's start with your thoughts on those aspects first.
Those are perfect evidence, and that brings to question the involvement of the toll gate operators. Don't forget that the camera was shut off and the lights were also shut off, and that is where the whole thing started. So for me, the operators of that toll gate are very, very culpable, and I want to see more sanction on that. Everybody that has been recommended or has been fingered to have been part of that, it must be brought to book and made to account for their sins, quote and unquote, because it was a deliberate attempt by state security agencies to be able to stifle that protest that went on for days without any rancor, without any the Stop Buses Act. And don't forget that the effect of that shootout was what led to the various destruction of several properties within Lagos State. Not the non-BRT buses that were destroyed, police stations, and the rest of them. So the report was so vivid. And when you look at members of that panel, which included Adegburuwa and Sega and so many of them, they did a very, very thorough job. At a point, I just felt that I was thinking that report was going to swept under the carpet, that why is it taking so long to come out with that report? But when I finally saw it yesterday and read it, I was very, very touched. But that is, as I said earlier on, that is not where it stopped. That is just the beginning. Now we have to start holding people that were responsible accountable for all the acts on being involved in that NSAS saga. And the families of those that were accused were compensated. But the most important thing for me, everybody that had a hand in that killing, in that shooting, and all the unwholesome activities that happened at the tollgate on that day should be brought to prosecuted and jailed as a deterrent for others who may want to plan such in the future.
All right, Chris Nwandu, let's share your thoughts on the headline that made it to the Guardian newspaper this morning. It's difficult to be impartial, objective without autonomy. That's what the Chief Justice of Nigeria is telling the president.
Well, the Chief Judge, yeah, you may be right to say a large extent, but our Constitution is very, very clear on the division, on separation of power. We have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, and it has been spelled out in the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 Constitution, as amended, giving each arm of government some kind of autonomy. So nobody can tell us that your hand were tied to the bag in order not to be able to perform or achieve. Yes, there have been some challenges. There have been executive interferences here and there. But the judiciary itself should also look inward, because they are also part of the problem. Most of the judges that we have presently, have they been as upright and outstanding as they're supposed to be? Here in law, we say who comes to equity comes with clean hands. Most of them come with clean hands. Just of recently, we saw a magistrate of a court in Abuja issuing a search warrant on the residence of the second highest ranking justice of the Supreme Court. That is judiciary to judiciary. And there have been so many instances where also judiciary officers, especially at the bench, have been indicted in corruption and the rest of them. But I agree with him. But that in itself, you cannot say that it's difficult to be impartial or objective without autonomy. You have, to a large extent, the Constitution has given the judiciary enough power to be able to regulate itself and be able to. What has even the judiciary done about its corrupt officers that have been indicted or have been found wanting? I remember vividly that the CGN summoned judges of the High Court who are giving some kind of conflicting judgment, and that was the last we heard about that. Have those that were invited have been indicted? If they were indicted, have them been punished? So yes, there's need for the judiciary to have its autonomy, which I still believe they do. But with the little power they have, how well have they used it? Also, recently, don't forget that even there was a bill that was passed giving autonomy to judicial workers. That they went on strike for a very long time, and that was granted. How then has that also been implemented in these various states by the various state governments and the rest of them? Autonomy, well, agreed.
But don't you also think that there's an issue where, of course, you know that the appointment of the judges or the Chief Justice of Nigeria, you still have the fact that it should be it's still done by the executive arm of government based on the recommendation of the NJC. So don't you think that that's entirely a problem that there should be given? And in terms of, finances as well. And you know how powerful money can be, with anything that we do in the system.
I agree with you perfectly. And don't forget, so is the three. What I think that we should be looking at is that for the judiciary, as it were, to push for amendment of that part of the Constitution, which gives the the executive the power. And it's not within the executive. It is now a judiciary legislative matter. Because if the judiciary can be able to get the legislature to be able to pass that or amend that, then the executive have no part in doing that. But until that section of the law is amended by the legislation, that the executive will continue to do what they are doing. I also agree with autonomy in terms of monetary value. That, but also forget. Let us also not forget that the judiciary is also the first line within the first line in payment when it comes to what happens in the legislature. The National Assembly don't depend on the executive for money. So if the judiciary can also push for that, most often than not, the National Assembly votes its own funds, and it doesn't have to wait for the president to approve payment, name it, at any given point in time for them to get their money. The same thing should happen within the judiciary. So I think that what we should be looking at is a holistic look at the legislative or the law, setting up some of this stuff so that it can be amended to give the judiciary the much power that it has. But my own, I still believe that presently, as it were, the judiciary still have enough power to be able to execute most of the things, but they should also look inward at some of the officers who are not living up to expectation. That is just my own thinking.
All right. On the Daily Trust this morning, there's a story there. It says troops kill 50 ISWAP fighters in Borno as bandits execute 15 persons in Sokoto and attack Zamfara village.
The life of a general or every single Nigerian soldier matters to us. And that is where we think that this fight is just stretching more than we expected. We expected by now that the military would have wrapped up with this insurgency and be able to break this to a minimum. But look at what even the story that's coming out just, I think, from Niger State also, that the bandits or whatever you name them have taken over about so many to do the needful. And good enough, we have at least some kind of, we'll be able to up the antics with the purchase of the Tucano helicopters, which is helping the fight against insurgency. But don't forget that also, a few days ago, Senator Aline Dume came out to say that ISWAP is regrouping within the Lake Chad region.
The Guardian says inflation decelerates and defies market reality. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, grammar. In as much as it's not make any impact, as we say, because the prices of goods and services is skyrocketing and it's affecting every aspect of Nigerian life. The problem. And insecurity, foreign investment, challenges of basic infrastructure, no good road,